No, my kid.
Here, I can take it. Here.
Yep, over here.
Okay, so go ahead and tell us who you are and how you came to Palmyra.
Okay, I'm John Kettering. I was born January 31st, 1922, and they tell me that the snow was that deep that the doctor had to come up from Lebanon in a sleigh, and my mother delivered me at the house. I lived up in that big home up there on top of the hill.
On Gravel Hill.
On Gravel Hill, and I was there until I went to high school. Before I drove all this. I had to walk every day, and in those days you didn't have buses for the kids. You had to walk, and we walked many times when we'd come down to go across the railroad, and the big trains would come. Sometimes it'd be an hour or so until trains would go by. Those days it was big business with freight cars. There could be 40, 50, 60 freight cars in one line.
It was probably dangerous too, with those kids standing there waiting for the trains to pass.
Oh, I have a lot of memory because I remember going coasting. We kids went coasting down from Gravel Hill on that Chestnut Street. They had that big hill, and we went down all the way down to the railroad. One day I went coasting on North Railroad Street and lost control of my sled and hit the telephone pole and broke my arm. And I've had great memories of when I was growing up, because I was growing up in depression. Today the kids have no idea what it is to eat corn food 4 or 5 times a week, because we didn't have any money. And I was in high school, and then I was trying to choose while I went to high school in order to help me get some clothes. Because my high school days were not the most pleasant, because it was in the depression days. And when we got ice cream once a week, that was a big deal. We used to sell at Wolf's Ice Cream place.
I was going to say, where did you get your ice cream?
On Railroad Street.
On Railroad Street. Wolf's Ice Cream.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was that?
With Wolf's Restaurant, what used to be now, wow, now there's a beer garden there. It's right when you cross. It's between Broad and Railroad Street.
Okay.
As you cross over Broad Street, it's the first house to the left.
Okay.
That used to be a restaurant there. Okay. And then my father used to get ice cream there once a week.
And you each got a dip. I remember my mother telling us.
Oh, that was hand dipped.
Yeah, right.
That was the good stuff.
Right.
It hand dipped it, and the higher it went dipping, we kids would, really enjoyed it. And I remember very vividly Mr. Earl, the Iceman. In those days, you didn't have refrigerators when I was growing up. Right. Back in the 30s, even ice boxes. And we kids used to follow the Iceman. And then when he'd go into another house, we could go out and get some ice. Those were the good old days.
Right. You're not the first person that told us that. They said that following the ice truck was a fun thing to do.
Oh,
that was a
we
treat.
had a good time doing that.
Now, it's Mr. Stauffer, was it, that was the Iceman? J. Early Stauffer.
Abe Stauffer, he's dead now. Right. He had their home there on Main Street.
And that's why they call that new restaurant the Ice House.
That's
right?
correct.
Because that was his home.
That's correct.
That was creative of those people to do that.
Yeah. That's where his home was. Okay. And of course, he was the only Iceman in town in the 30s, and he had oodles of customers. And then we used to Lizzie Brubaker, and she didn't know her. And then there was another lady we used to go eat strawberries and pull birds. I mean, things were tough when I was a kid growing up. We didn't have any money. And of course, in this day and age, these kids don't want to hear about it. No, they don't want to. They're concerned about. They don't care care what you went through.
That's
But-
why we're doing this video, by the way,
Beg
to let
pardon?
people know how it was. That's why we're doing this video, to let people know how it was
Yeah.
in the early 1900s and 1920s and 30s and 40s in Palmyra.
Well, if you got ice cream once a week, that was really a thrill.
Mhm. Did you have a big garden at your house then, up on
And
the hill?
then we had a garden, and then we went to, my father was an auctioneer to earn extra money, and then we used to go to Sunset Market in Lebanon.
Right.
On a Friday night, we had a big auction there, and for $2, I'd work for 9 hours. Kids wouldn't do that today. For $2, and I would, when he auctioned things off, I'd take it out to the customer.
Mhm.
Sunset Market had thousands of people there on a Friday night, and that was a big deal.
Hmm.
But things in Palmyra are far different today than they were back in those days.
What do you, I don't know how to ask the question. What would be your fondest memories of growing up in Palmyra?
I would say my fondest memories were when, well, I had a lot of good memories. I mean, I was very active in school. And
Okay, what types of things were you
I
active
was
in?
president of my class in my senior year.
And which class was that?
That class in 1940.
Okay, 1940. So you then did go to the high school. We were talking to different people who said they went to the Railroad Street building, their whole school. Now you're saying you went to Railroad, then you moved over to the,
I went first to that red big building way up in the gravel hill
oh, okay.
for 1 year.
And what was that
That was a
called?
one-room schoolhouse.
Okay.
Then you walked everything, you didn't drive, there wasn't no buses or anything.
Okay.
And then from there I went to grade school, which is on North Railroad Street. And that's when we had the oil furnaces. That's when the oil furnaces were oiled. And I think one of my, maybe you don't want to hear this, but one of the main things I can remember, I'll never forget, Mr. Hartz was our president at school.
Mhm.
And we kids used to have a game to see who could lean the furthest out the toilet window up on the second floor.
Oh my gosh.
And of course I fell one day and
Out of the second floor of the railroad building?
broke my leg and broke my ankle, and Dr. Mr. Hart said he can't believe how stupid you can be. I said, well, we were just trying to that's the game we were playing. But those days, you know, the girls were separate, the boys were separate. I mean, you had your separate bathroom
Oh, right.
for the girls, separate
Right.
for the boys. And we had, Mr. Hart was the principal, and Buck Schwank was, when I got into high school,
Mhm.
but Buck was our history teacher, and I guess because of my big yelling and carrying on, but I used to be the coach in the baseball games.
Oh, really? Okay.
So-
The official one or the unofficial?
Oh yeah, I had my uniform on. Oh, those days I thought it was great wearing a uniform because I was the third base coach.
Okay.
When we played baseball, that's when Danny Baldwin lived. He's dead now, he's gone. But Danny Baldwin and Stuck Stover and
Now, did you play on that corner baseball diamond, what is that, Locust and,
I think that my fondest memories was Reverend Patrick. When we were kids, just growing up, some of them, including me, some of them, we weren't too precious. I mean, we were kind of naughty.
oh,
And Reverend Patrick was the minister at the church up on the hill.
right.
And he had just been recently divorced from his wife, and then he spent all his time with us kids.
Oh.
And he had charge of the baseball team, and he was a real nice person. Of course, he's gone now. That's way back in the 30s
Mhm.
when he was up there. And then at Gravel Hill, we had the Gravel Hill baseball team and the Cubs team and the kids team. And
So baseball was a really big part of your life. mentioned something about baseball fields down, near where Kraft was? Was there a baseball area down there, a recreation area down
Yeah,
there?
oh, yeah, many years ago.
Right, I mean, that's what I mean, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's where they had swings and sleds, and that's when you got on each side of the,
The teeter-totters,
yeah, what did they call them? I forget what they call them.
seesaws.
Yeah,
Seesaw.
seesaw. So, yeah, I tell you, when you say you want to know, there'd be many, you could be here for hours.
I know that. That's why we're trying to take little snippets of stories that you as individuals remember from those days and try to put them together in some kind of order. It's interesting how many of them overlap. We heard from, I won't leave her name off of this, but we heard from someone earlier who fell down the banister in the old Railroad Street building because she was sliding down the banister and then broke her foot. You know, so your story sort of is similar to hers.
I tell you, when I was in high school, I'll never forget, you know where the post office was on Main Street?
Yes.
Well, I shined shoes, and in order to increase my business, I thought instead of going down, having my shoe shine shop downstairs, I'd like to bring my stand up and bring it up on the pavement. And my dad went by and saw it. Oh man, I'll never forget that.
You got in trouble.
Oh, I got in trouble like everything, but I had myself all blacked up.
Oh no!
But those were the days when
Well,
those were the days when you shined shoes and the guy gave you a nickel tip, and you cleaned these cuffs a little. You thought you were in heaven. Today, if you take a kid a nickel, he'd be insulted.
Yeah, things have definitely changed in terms of prices of things and value of items and services and so forth. You mentioned your father. Was he the Mr. Kettering that had the store on Railroad Street?
He had the store where Engel's store used to be, then he had the nursing homes. He had 2 nursing homes.
Okay, so how did he progress? You said he was an auctioneer, and then how did he,
Well,
Engel's had a store right there on Railroad Street.
When I was a kid, he was in the coal and feed business.
Okay.
Right across when you went up Railroad Street, you go across the road, and on the left-hand side was the feed mill, and he had the lumber yard in the back. And then when he went broke in the lumber business, he broke a bunch of Jewish builders in Harrisburg, bought thousands and thousands of lumber from him, never paid him, so he went broke. So then when he went broke, my dad had to get a job. And in the meantime, he was a preacher on the side.
Oh, okay.
And so he had to get a job. So he worked for selling feed for maybe 4 or 5 years. And as I was a kid, just a kid in junior high school, when I was there, 12, 14, 15 years old, he used to take with me some of the Amish people down in Lancaster County with him as company.
Okay.
And I mean, we had some tough sales, and then my dad, on the side, auctioneers. He did a lot of things, because mother wasn't well, and she went to Whitehaven up in what's called a home for people that are sick,
Okay.
up in
Like a
up in the
sanatorium?
Poconos.
Okay.
And that was expensive to do
Uh-huh.
that. But at any rate, we had a tough.
So he went from the feed mill, and is that where Eversole's feed mill was later? On Railroad Street there? Eversole's had a feed mill,
Well,
right?
Curry's were there too.
Okay, all right.
At feed mill, one side of the road, and then there's another on the other side of the road.
Okay.
He had his Berman's lumber
Berman's
yard.
lumber.
He had Berman's lumber yard.
Oh, I see, I didn't know that.
You know
Okay.
where Berman's
Yes,
lumber
I
yard
know where
is?
it is, yeah.
Okay, well, he owned Berman's lumber yard. That's when he went broke.
Okay.
And then we lived right across the street. See, you talk about memories, from the time I was born way up in the hill in 1922, on January 31st, in a bad snowstorm, by the time we got to the railroad, we had moved 6 times.
Oh, my goodness.
As a kid, I mean,
Right.
my mother wasn't well, and I had two sisters that were older than me, and I was the third one. I was the only boy at that time. There was just the three of us, and then my brother was born later on. But I know you don't want to hear this, but I didn't have a glorious bringing up.
Right, well, many people don't. You know, I think that's more, particularly like you said, in the Depression,
Yeah.
that's more common than not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it wasn't it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't. Some things we did were nice. Well, everything was so different then than it is now. But I think that if I had to do over, of course everybody's that way. If I had to do over, I would have gone to college. But when I came out of the service, my father said I had to work for him in the store, so I couldn't go to school.
Well, how long did he have that store? You're talking about that one, they had clothing or they had furniture?
First he had a furniture, and then he had a...
Because people talk about Ketterings down there in Redwood.
What do you talk about?
Well, when we were confused.
What do you talk about? What do you call where you sell dress goods and things? What do you call
Dry
it?
goods.
He had dry goods.
Okay.
Dry goods and furniture down in that where Engel's store was.
Okay.
That was right across from the feed mill.
Right, okay.
And that's when I went in the service I was in the army in Australia for over 3 years. I never got home.
Oh my goodness.
From my father got remarried, my mother died, my grandpa died, my grandma died, a lot of people died while I was gone. I never got a furlough. Some fellows had furloughs. I never got a furlough.
Hmm.
But one group, I don't know if you ever heard of Jay Crady, but
Yes.
when we went to I moved to Buffalo, New York for a year, and my dad didn't want me going in the service. So I went up there to work at Curtis Wright Airplane Plant in Buffalo, New York, and I was up there for a year, and then when I came back home, they made Jay Crady and me what they call captains. Half of our group went to New Cumberland, and the other half went to Fort Meade in the Army.
Okay.
And we left from Palmyra by train, and that was an experience, there's no question about it, because I had never shot a gun, I never was an active guy for shooting or anything.
Right.
Of course, that's how I lost my hearing.
Oh, I didn't realize that, but that makes sense.
I was on basic training, and I didn't want to hear earplugs, and I didn't listen. And of course, I was my eardrum by all the shattering of the... I'm jumping around, but I don't know.
No, okay, now you were in service, that's okay.
But I had...
That all contributes to your story.
See, when I was in the service, I went to New Guinea. You probably never even heard of it.
Oh, I did, but I don't know if I'll ever see
New Guinea
it.
is where the Japs were going to come in and take over Australia.
Oh, okay.
And of course, I got transferred to Australia, and from there I went to New Guinea. And I was sleeping, you talk about events, I was sleeping in tents with screens with the snakes and the mosquitoes and what have you. And so one day they said to me, one day at Reveille, they called us all out and said they're looking for volunteers that know how to type. Well, about the only thing good I was in school was typing.
I agree, well, it came in handy.
So I volunteered, and I passed the typing test, the speed test, and with it I could do a little shorthand, not a lot, but I got enough to get by. So I got assigned to General MacArthur's headquarters. For 3 years I saw him almost every day.
Oh my goodness.
I was in his seat, we were sleeping in between cots and sheets home, and that was heaven. Because we were sleeping with General MacArthur, we were attached to General MacArthur's  Now you could never talk, if we came on the elevator, you didn't talk to him. If he talked to you, you talked to him. If he didn't say anything, you didn't say good morning, General, or there's nothing.
You had to know the rules of,
His rules.
Encounterment, I
He was
guess.
a stern guy.
yeah.
I mean, but we had to take a lot of what we call crap from the officers that were in charge of that he was over. But it was better than being in New Guinea. So I was there for over 3 years, and then the last year I was in charge of sending all the brides home from Australia. There were a lot of soldiers married
Married
Australian
Australians.
girls because they were looking to come to America.
Oh, that's
So-
and you had to send them all then to America.
Yeah, so I was the sergeant in charge, and that was interesting.
Hmm.
You know, put them on a boat and what have you. So I don't know if anything I told you
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's
was
fine.
worth it or not.
Yeah. Well, if I ask, if you were going to, well, I think I did ask you that question. I was gonna say, if you were gonna sell Palmyra to people today, what would you say is, what's your feeling about Palmyra? Because you were gone
Well-
throughout, and I know there's one time you lived, when you were working, you lived out in the middle of the country, and, you know, and then came back to
Yeah, I
Palmyra.
lived in Michigan for
Right.
3 years
Right. and
while I
then-
was working.
Right.
But Palmyra is close to everything. It's close to Hershey. It's close to Harrisburg. It's not far from Philadelphia. It's only 160 miles to New York City. It's very centrally located.
Right, it is.
It's a nice area to live
Do
in.
you think that's why a lot of industry came into Palmyra through the years and so forth, because of our railroad was right there, I guess they could bring things in, you know, is that why people decided to settle here? In terms of the location, do you think the
Well,
location had a lot?
during the Depression, Hershey kept this place going. If it wouldn't have been for Hershey, I mean, another thing was, remember, I'll never forget when we lifted out of school when the strikers and the farmers came into Hershey with pitchforks back in 1937.
Huh. What did you do then? We heard
I
about
was there
somebody,
that day.
you were there, were you in the parade? Somebody told us they were in the parade that day.
I was there watching, and I didn't have it, but I had a lot of pictures of it. That was 1937.
Yeah.
And then right after that, when they had that big flood, you know, we had a bad flood in 37.
I know, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yes, goodness, yes.
And what types of things did we lose then?
Well, the basement, at home, our basement filled up to 4 or 5 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big, we had bad weather that same year. Same year they had the strike. I can remember that well.
Then I remember in '72, we had that Agnes.
Then we had another one in 72.
Right, and the basements were filled then too. I didn't realize there was one in 37. Now, we started this DVD as a side project of the 250th anniversary. How many of the anniversaries were you part of throughout the years? In 1910 there was one, you would have been part of that one. Then in 1939, I think, there was or 35, there was an
At
anniversary. Do you remember
35,
that?
I was a little bit, I forget anymore what it was, but I was on some kind of a committee, but I don't remember. I can't, it was vague, but I was around in 1935.
1935.
I never left Palmyra till after I got in, after the service was over and I got into, come with the National Cash Register, because I spent 30 years in town.
Oh, with National Cash Register.
I was their leading salesman for 2 years. I went to Europe and I was all over the place. I was lucky.
Now, how did you get that job? I mean, were you recruited out of Palmyra?
I got that job at Hershey. I got that job. I was selling furniture at Miller's Furniture Store in Harrisburg. A Jewish guy. I was a T.O. man, like you came to buy something and you weren't buying from the guy. There's a button on the floor you push, and I'd be the T.O. man. Then I'd come up and say, well, this Mr. Kettering here is in charge of the department. It's a lot of malarkey, but you didn't know that. So then I would start taking over to try to sell, you see. So I was a T.O. man at Hershey. So one day, Charlie Weaver, who bless his soul, he's not dead. He was a serviceman there in 1950. Back in 1950, he said, John, they're looking for, should tell you how the good Lord took good care of me. I went up there in March of 1950 to apply for a job, and the fellow said to me, well now, he said, we want to give you an aptitude test, and I took tests for 3 hours. I can remember that, aptitude tests and mathematics and you name it, everything, true and false and multiple choice. And so when I took it after 9 o'clock at night, I had been working at Harrisburg.
Okay,
So I took it at 9, so it took me 3 hours to do it, so I was there till midnight. So a week later the test came back, the guy, and I was hoping I could get this because it's a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no college, you know, remember?
Mm-hmm.
I just had high school education and a little business, but not that much. So at any rate, when they called me, he said, your test came back and you have a lot of ability. You have a lot of sales ability, but we'd like you to take it again because we feel the test shows that you were mentally tired.
Oh, I guess so, after working all day.
I worked all day and then took that test at 9 o'clock at night, from 9 to 12. So I went back the next week to take the test and I passed it. And listen to this, boy, how lucky I was. 6 months after I was hired, National Cash Register brought a ruling out that no salespeople would get hired without a college, 4-year
Oh,
college.
really? Okay.
I was lucky.
Right.
And of course I was producing, I was working, selling, and that's what they're looking for, producers.
Right.
But I was a worker and I was doing well, and so boss called me in one day, he said, he said, would you be willing to go to school? I said, sure, I would be willing to go to school because I could see the future. I could make a lot of money later on. Because in those days, if you made $40,000, $50,000 a year, that was a lot of money.
Right.
In the 50s.
Right, exactly.
That was a lot of money.
Right.
And I was doing that. I don't mean that to brag and thank God that the Lord was good. I don't mean that the wrong way.
Wow.
Please understand me. But
Right.
that was big money, and I wanted to be sure to keep it because they said, well, you just keep on selling. He said, I think you'll be fine. Do you want to go to school? I said, yes, I'll go to school. So then they sent me to school for 6 months of training school in Dayton, Ohio. And then the professor out there said to me, he said, you got more good common sense than most of the college kids that I have in here now. So he said, don't worry about it. I said, I wasn't sure I'd pass the test because they were computerized. There were a lot of computers in it. And a lot of the fellows I was with in school were speed readers. I mean, they could read things like that and comprehended to oh, Johnny had to keep working at it. So the Lord's been good to me through the years, I'll tell you. And I never would have thought, because if I live till the 31st of January, I'll be 89 years old.
That's wonderful. That's
So
wonderful. That's why we wanted to talk with you.
So I think that my mind being pretty good for 89.
I think so too. And you have a lot of good memories there. Even whether they might, you alluded to the fact that possibly some of the memories aren't even that good because of bad things that might have happened to you through the years, but the memories are there, which is a good sign.
With my father, when he got remarried, and I moved down there where the store was, but I was lucky because I went to fellas at the end of the service that didn't come home. They come home in a box.
Right, that's right.
I was fortunate.
So there was a purpose for you that you may not have known, but there was a purpose, and there was a purpose that you're here at 89 yet.
I want to tell you there's a purpose that just happened to me. That won't go on the thing. I don't
That's
know.
okay, we can cut it if you don't want to.
But I was lucky I wasn't killed a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Right here, right up. Where we
In the
at.
car? Were you driving?
Demolished the car my car was demolished and the car that hit me was demolished. Both of us demolished.
No.
And she was going for a little girl, and thank God she didn't get it because she could have been killed.
Oh, no.
But my whole front end, back end of my side of my driver's side was smashed in. And all the glass hit me, but not a thing hit my face. I'm so blessed. Oh my God. You talk about the Lord watching over, I can guarantee you, I witnessed it.
Oh, yeah.
That just happened 3 weeks ago.
Well, I know.
So
It's-
I'm lucky.
As I tell my children, it's always, you have to look out for the other person, you know, I mean, you may be trying hard to be a good driver, but when you're on the road.
Well, you know, with this, it's happened right out here.
Mhm.
You know, where you come across where the Living Valley Medical Center is,
Mhm.
you know where that
Oh,
cross?
that's a very dangerous intersection.
That's it.
Extremely, on Ford Road.
That's there.
Oh,
I came
no.
across and she come this way.
Oh, no.
And of course, I didn't see her. I had stopped, but I didn't see her, and I was lucky. We couldn't.
Oh, my gosh, well, and there is a purpose that you're here.
That's not in for any.
No, you can cut that, that's fine. But we have to stop now, because if we're running out of time here.
Yeah, it's okay.
But you have anything else you want to tell us about Palmyra and your life in Palmyra? Are you glad you grew up in Palmyra? You've traveled other places. Do you think you would have rather been living someplace else?
Well, Palmyra is there are a lot of nicer places than Palmyra. I mean, you don't want to hear that, but I'm just telling
No.
you from me to you.
Yeah.
But people are very clannish in this area, if you know what I mean, to understand what I mean about that. If you don't belong to this certain group, it's kind
But
of
don't you think they have that other places?
it's kind of a closed society.
Mm.
But I found, when I'm in my traveling, I found that living in the South would be beautiful. Oh my God, the people are so kind down south. You ever been down south?
Yes.
Do you notice the difference in the people when
No,
you're down south?
I perceive them as false.
Beg pardon?
I perceive them as false, having a sort of a false friendliness.
You would what?
I perceive the Southern hospitality as being somewhat false and somewhat pretentious. I don't know.
Well, now that's the way you perceive it.
You're right, that's the way I perceive
I
it.
don't perceive it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought the Southern girls were lovely. I never married one, but I thought they were.
Yeah.
I loved to listen to them talk and whatnot. But I mean, they were very hospitable. They were, in other words, if you say they put on it, if they put on a show, they put a good one on, because if you visit their homes and whatnot, their etiquette or politeness or whatever terminology you want to use was here it's much, over there, down there you can get friends like that, but not here.
No, and I think some of that has to do with the German background. You know, I think
Right.
people in this area mostly are German, and they're very suspect before they're giving. But overall, I think they're giving through. It's just it's a matter of. But you're right. I think there's clans. I think that there's cliques and clans. But I think you can find that anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry if we
Well,
disturbed
I
a
don't know-
nap or something.
I don't know if that helped you.
Yes, we're going to take little snippets from all over, okay?
Okay, thank you.